Welcome to Outbreak Brief, the podcast that takes you inside the world's most dangerous infections.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here to dive into this one.
Today, we are looking at a microscopic killer that hides in plain sight within the very water you drink. It is a disease that has stalked humanity for centuries, and it still holds the power to drain the life from a person in a matter of hours.
Yeah, it really is terrifying when you look at the timeline of this infection.
Because, when we think of lethal diseases, the mind usually goes to something that slowly degrades the body over weeks or maybe months, like a lingering battle. But the truly terrifying hallmark of cholera is its sheer relentless speed.
Exactly. It is a pathogen capable of taking a perfectly healthy person. Someone who woke up feeling entirely fine, went about their day, and pushing them into severe hypovolemic shock and organ failure by sunset.
By sunset. Just incredible.
Right. We are talking about a disease that can strip away up to 10% of a person's entire body weight in just a few hours.
10%. If you weigh 150 pounds, that's 15 pounds of pure fluid lost almost instantly. Just try to visualize that speed for a second. Imagine the fluid loss like a draining bathtub. A patient with severe cholera can lose 20 milliliters of fluid per kilogram of body weight every single hour.
It is a relentless pouring drain, yeah.
And what makes this even more chilling is a variant known in clinical circles as cholera-sicca, right?
Yes, cholera-sicca, which translates to dry cholera, which sounds like a total paradox.
Right, dry cholera when we just talked about losing all this fluid.
Exactly. But it is actually one of the most brutal manifestations of the disease.
Yeah.
In these rare cases, the body pumps massive amounts of fluid out of the bloodstream and tissues, but that fluid pools rapidly within the intestinal lumen.
Which is the inside of the gut.
Right, the inside of the gut. So the patient goes into complete circulatory collapse and dies before the severe hallmark diarrhea even has a chance to begin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The fluid is lost from the vital organs, but it remains entirely trapped inside the body.
It's just a horrifying image. The body essentially drowns itself from the inside out.
It really does.
And the villain doing this isn't some complex sci-fi monster with razor-sharp teeth. It's an organism lurking in the most basic necessity of human life, which is water. So to understand how a microscopic infection can trigger such a rapid physical collapse, we really need to meet the organism responsible.
The culprit here is a bacterium called Vibrio cholerae. And if you were to view it under a microscope, it looks remarkably simple. It's just a tiny curved comma.
Just a little comma floating around.
Just a comma.
Okay.
But it is a gram-negative bacterium. And that gram-negative designation is really important because it means the bacterium possesses a thin inner cell wall that is sandwiched beneath a really tough outer membrane.
So it's kind of like wearing a bulletproof vest over a chainmail shirt.
That is a great analogy, yeah.
Yeah.
That outer membrane makes it highly resilient against certain threats. It also features a single polar flagellum.
Which is a whip-like tail at one end, right?
Exactly. It acts as a powerful microscopic propeller. This allows the bacteria to swim actively through water and eventually to bore right through the thick mucus lining of our intestines.
And we have, over 200 different serogroups or families of this bacteria floating around in the wild?
We do, yeah, over 200. But only two of them, O1 and O139, are considered toxigenic strains capable of sparking actual epidemics.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why are those two so devastating? Because from what I understand, the bacteria itself isn't actually biting into human tissue or destroying cells like some flesh-eating bug.
Right? No, not at all. It is a non-invasive bacterium. That means it doesn't burrow into your bloodstream or chew up your cells. The devastation stems entirely from a highly specific protein that it secretes once it attaches to the wall of your small intestine.
And that's the cholera toxin.
Exactly, the cholera toxin. You can think of this toxin as a biochemical skeleton key. It seamlessly enters your intestinal epithelial cells and targets a specific enzyme called adenylate cyclase, and it locks it permanently in the on position.
It just jams the master switch.
It does. It completely jams it. And when that switch is jammed, the cell overproduces a messenger molecule called cyclic AMP.
Okay, and what does cyclic AMP do?
Well, you can imagine cyclic AMP as the internal alarm bell of the cell. The toxin forces that alarm to ring continuously, sending this unyielding signal that forces the cells to actively pump chloride, bicarbonate, and water out of your tissues and directly into the gut cavity.
Wow. So the bacteria fundamentally hacks the cell's machinery just to dump its fluid.
Right. It hijacks your own body to do the work.
It's like a burglar breaking into your house, and instead of stealing your valuables, they just turn every single faucet on full blast, snap the handles, and leave until the entire house floods from the inside out.
That is exactly what happens. The bacteria is merely altering your cellular plumbing to suit its own needs. Because the flood of water helps flush the newly multiplied bacteria out of your body and back into the environment to infect the next host.
I mean, this highly specialized, almost mechanical method of attacking human cells is so precise, but it didn't just appear out of nowhere. It evolved over centuries of deadly pandemics.
It did. If we trace the genomic history of the disease, the map points us directly to the Ganges Delta in the Bay of Bengal.
And that's where it all started.
Yeah, that specific region spawned the first 6 global pandemics between 1827 and 1923. Those early, devastating waves were caused by what we call the classical biotype of the bacteria.
But the landscape shifted since then.
It did, yeah. We are actually currently living in the 7th pandemic.
Wait, we are in a pandemic right now? I feel like most people have no idea about that.
Most people don't, but yes. The 7th pandemic began back in 1961. It started in Sulawesi, Indonesia, driven by a new, slightly hardier biotype called L-Tor.
L-Tor.
Right. And from Indonesia, it slowly and methodically marched across the globe. It hit Africa in the 1970s and eventually reached the Americas by 1991, where it sparked a massive outbreak in Peru.
So it's just been relentlessly moving.
Very relentlessly. And the reason Vibrio cholerae is so successful is its evolutionary agility. It possesses 2 circular chromosomes, which is quite unusual for a bacterium, and it evolves rapidly by acquiring mobile genetic elements from its environment.
Meaning it can essentially pick up loose DNA from other organisms to upgrade itself.
Exactly.
And looking at our sources for this deep dive, this leads to what I think is the most mind-bending fact of this entire disease. That deadly cholera toxin, the thing that floods the gut and kills the host, wasn't even invented by the bacteria, was it?
No, it wasn't. The genetic code for the cholera toxin is completely foreign to the original bacterium. It actually comes from a bacteriophage called CTX5.
And a bacteriophage is a virus.
Right. It's a virus that specifically hunts and infects bacteria. Usually a virus infects a host, multiplies, and destroys the host. But in this case, the CTX phage inserted its own viral DNA directly into the Vibrio cholerae chromosomes.
Hang on. So a virus infected a bacteria, permanently integrated its own genetic code into the bacteria's DNA, and that viral upgrade is what makes this bacteria so deadly to humans.
That is exactly what happened.
It's like a microscopic, deadly Russian nesting doll. That is wild.
The irony is profound, isn't it? The virus infects the bacteria through a specific receptor, effectively turning a relatively harmless environmental microbe into a weaponized mass killer. This genetic upgrade gave the bacteria an incredibly efficient, albeit gruesome, method of spreading itself.
Which brings us to how this actually moves from person to person. Plainly speaking, it is the fecal-oral route.
Yes, the bacteria thrives in sewage-contaminated water and food, but it is also a naturally occurring aquatic organism.
Really? So it just lives in nature on its own?
Yeah, it lives comfortably in coastal, brackish waters. Those are areas where salty ocean water mixes with fresh river water. Because of this, it can attach to the shells of tiny crustaceans or be filtered by oysters, making raw or undercooked shellfish a very real vector for infection.
Wow, okay, so it's not just contaminated drinking water.
Right. The water is the primary driver in outbreaks. And once ingested, the incubation period is incredibly short. It can strike in as little as 12 hours, or it can take up to 5 days. And crucially, fresh human feces from an infected person are considered hyper-infectious for the first 24 hours.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. I was digging into the clinical data, and it highlights that Vibrio cholerae is not an acid-resistant organism.
No, it's not.
In fact, it is rapidly destroyed by the hydrochloric acid in the human stomach. So because of that vulnerability, it requires a massive inoculum, meaning a person has to swallow around 100 million bacteria in a single gulp of contaminated water just for the infection to take hold.
That's right, 100 million.
So if your stomach acid is literally designed to melt this pathogen on contact, how does it ever reach the intestines?
Well, the bacteria utilizes a swarm strategy. It relies on sheer, overwhelming numbers. I mean, if you ingest a few thousand bacteria, your stomach acid easily neutralizes the threat.
It just wipes them out.
Exactly. But if you ingest hundreds of millions, which is very easily done if you're drinking highly contaminated water, the front lines of the bacterial army are absolutely decimated by your stomach acid.
Right.
However, as those millions of frontline bacteria die, their cellular contents actually act as a chemical buffer. They temporarily neutralize the acidity of the surrounding stomach fluid, creating a microscopic, safe bubble.
Wait, so millions died just to alter the environment enough for the core of the swarm to survive?
Exactly, they sacrifice themselves. And the survivors ride that neutralized bubble straight through the stomach and into the alkaline sanctuary of the small intestine. And once they reach the intestines, the environment is perfect for them to rapidly multiply and unleash the toxin.
It's an overwhelming numbers game.
Completely.
And this reliance on massive environmental contamination dictates exactly who ends up in the crosshairs of this disease.
It does. Cholera heavily targets vulnerable populations, specifically those who lack reliable access to WASH, which stands for water, sanitation, and hygiene.
Right, basic infrastructure.
Yeah. Socioeconomically, we see devastating outbreaks in regions fractured by war, mass displacement, or natural disasters. The devastating 2010 earthquake in Haiti, the ongoing conflicts in Yemen and Sudan.
Because these events shatter the sanitation infrastructure.
Exactly. When sewage mixes with drinking water, you create the perfect breeding ground for that required massive inoculum we just talked about.
But the sources also point out some fascinating biological risks that make certain individuals far more susceptible regardless of where they live.
Yes, biologically, people with blood type O are at a significantly higher risk for developing severe, life-threatening cholera.
Blood type O.
Yeah, blood type O. Now, they aren't more likely to catch the bacteria, but if they are infected, the cholera toxin seems to bind much more effectively to the intestinal receptors of type O individuals. And that leads to far more drastic fluid loss.
That is fascinating. Are there other biological factors?
There are. Individuals with cholera-Vibrio, which is a medical condition resulting in a lack of stomach acid, are highly vulnerable.
Because they are missing that crucial first line of defensive acid. So the bacteria doesn't even need the swarm strategy to get through.
Exactly. They have no chemical barrier.
So having blood type O or low stomach acid is like leaving your biological front door completely unlocked. But a lack of public sanitation is what actually invites the burglar into your neighborhood in the first place.
That's a very accurate way to look at it. Cholera serves as a brutal mirror reflecting a society's inequities. It actively exploits failing infrastructure and poverty, preying on those who simply cannot afford the luxury of clean water.
And once that barrier is breached, the bacteria multiplies and the toxin is released. If the gut starts flooding at the cellular level, the physical toll on the body must be incredibly violent.
Violent and terrifyingly fast. While many people have mild or moderate symptoms, about 1 in 10 develops severe disease, which is clinically known as cholera gravis.
And what does that look like?
It begins with the sudden onset of profuse, painless, watery diarrhea. In medical settings, it's described as rice water stools because the sheer volume of fluid is milky white, speckled with flecks of intestinal mucus.
Wow.
And this rapid draining is accompanied by violent vomiting and excruciating leg cramps.
The cramps are a direct result of the body rapidly losing its electrolytes, aren't they?
Yes. Vital minerals like potassium and sodium are flushed out of the system in mere hours. What you are witnessing is severe volume contraction.
The body is literally drying out from within.
Exactly. A patient will present with a rapid, thready heart rate, deeply sunken eyes, a dangerous drop in blood pressure, and a clinical sign known as washerwoman skin.
Washerwoman skin.
Yeah, this is where the skin completely loses its turgor, its elasticity. If you pinch the skin on a patient's arm, it just stays tented up in a ridge. It doesn't snap back.
The visceral horror of washerwoman skin is hard to shake. Just imagining your own body or the body of a loved one rapidly shrinking and losing its vital fluids in real time.
It's horrific. And if that lost fluid isn't replaced immediately, the volume contraction leads rapidly to kidney failure, coma, and ultimately death.
With the human body deteriorating so rapidly, medical intervention must be immediate. But considering the terrifying speed and lethality we've just discussed, the cure is shockingly simple.
It really is. It is arguably one of the greatest modern medical miracles. The primary treatment is ORS, oral rehydration solution. It is a very specific, reduced osmolar mix of clean water, salt, and glucose.
Wait, just sugar, salt, and water?
Just sugar, salt, and water. But the precise ratio is what saves the life. The term reduced osmolar means the solution has a slightly lower concentration of sodium and glucose than older formulas.
And why is that important?
This is critical because it utilizes the gut's sodium-glucose cotransporters. Even though the cholera toxin has jammed the cell's machinery to force chloride and water out, the ORS actively exploits a completely different cellular pathway, pulling sodium and water back into the bloodstream.
So it overrides the bacterial flood.
Yes, it essentially bypasses the damaged system. Now, for severe cases where the patient is unconscious or can't drink fast enough, doctors use aggressive IV fluids. A patient might require up to 350 milliliters per kilogram of body weight in just 24 hours.
To put that in perspective for you listening, for an average adult, that's over 24 liters of fluid pumped straight into their veins in a single day. That is an astonishing amount of liquid.
It is a massive, frantic resuscitation. And to manage this in field hospitals, medical staff use what are called cholera cots.
Cholera cots.
Yeah, these are specialized beds with a hole cut in the center and a calibrated measuring bucket placed underneath.
Wow, okay, so it's very utilitarian.
Very. This allows doctors to measure the exact amount of fluid the patient is losing and replace it intravenously, milliliter for milliliter. We also use antibiotics like doxycycline to kill the bacteria and cut the duration of the illness, along with zinc and vitamin A supplements for children.
But the sources explicitly warn against some common meds, right?
Yes, it is crucial to note that anti-motility drugs, the common over-the-counter medications you take to stop diarrhea, are absolutely useless and highly dangerous here.
Because you want the bacteria and the toxin flushed out of the body, not trapped inside a paralyzed gut.
Exactly. You do not want to trap that fluid inside.
So what does this all mean? I look at our modern world. We have MRI machines, gene editing, artificial intelligence, yet a disease capable of causing global pandemics and hypovolemic shock can essentially be cured with the correct ratio of sugar, salt, and water.
It's humbling. The statistics highlight the power of that simple intervention. Without any treatment, severe cholera carries a mortality rate of over 50%.
Over half.
But with prompt aggressive rehydration, that mortality rate plummets to less than 1%.
Less than 1%. That is incredible. But while treatment is a medical miracle, relying on treating people after their bodies are already collapsing is a losing battle. We have to look at how to build biological shields before the infection takes root. So where do we stand with vaccines?
Well, we utilize oral cholera vaccines, or OCVs. They are taken by mouth, which makes perfect sense given the pathogen targets the gut.
Right.
The main ones deployed globally are Dukoral, Uvicol Plus, and the newly WHO pre-qualified Uvicol S, which was just approved in 2024. These vaccines normally require a strict 2-dose regimen for full efficacy.
2 doses.
Normally, yes. However, the global public health community is currently facing a severe crisis. Due to an unprecedented global stockpile shortage that began in October 2022, health agencies have been forced into a corner.
What are they doing?
They've had to abandon the standard 2-dose regimen in favor of a single-dose strategy, just to stretch the dwindling supplies across multiple outbreak zones.
It seems wild that in 2026, with all our technological advancements, we are literally rationing life-saving vaccines to 1 dose per person. Are we losing ground to the bacteria?
The bottleneck is incredibly frustrating. The hurdle isn't just manufacturing the biological components, it's navigating regulatory red tape, securing funding, and overcoming the massive logistical challenge of maintaining a cold chain.
Because the vaccines have to stay cold.
Right. These vaccines must be kept consistently refrigerated, which is profoundly difficult when you're delivering them to low-resource, disaster-stricken settings without reliable electricity. Furthermore, natural immunity after surviving an infection, much like the vaccine-induced immunity, is only temporary.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it protects you for a few years, but it doesn't last forever.
So vaccines are a vital stopgap, but a temporary shield can't replace the ultimate cure, which is completely altering the human environment.
Exactly. Wash water, sanitation, and hygiene is the only permanent preventative cure for cholera. We are talking about foundational public health infrastructure, providing resources to boil water safely before consuming it, ensuring the safe and isolated disposal of human feces, and establishing robust surveillance systems to catch outbreaks before they explode.
And speaking of surveillance, how exactly do we track outbreaks in these remote or disaster-hit areas? Our sources highlight a 2-pronged approach using rapid diagnostic tests versus traditional lab cultures.
Right. Rapid diagnostic tests, or RDTs, are cheap, dipstick-style tests used directly in the field. They require minimal training and give immediate results, allowing public health officials to declare an outbreak swiftly.
That sounds great.
It is, but the laboratory culture remains the slower but entirely necessary gold standard. The culture actually grows the bacteria in a lab to confirm the exact strain and test it for antibiotic resistance.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I should also point out that mass administration of antibiotics to healthy people in a community, a practice known as chemoprophylaxis, is strongly discouraged.
Why is that? Wouldn't you want to preemptively treat people?
It seems logical, but it doesn't effectively stop the spread of the disease. and it directly breeds dangerous antimicrobial resistance.
Ah, right. So I look at the surveillance tools like this. Using an RDT dipstick in the field is like installing a smoke detector. It immediately alerts you that there's a fire so you can evacuate the building and start pumping water.
That's a great way to think of it.
But you still need the lab culture, the fire investigator, to arrive days later, sift through the ashes, and tell you exactly how the fire started and what chemical accelerant was used.
Epidemiologists rely on that exact combination. The RDT triggers the immediate humanitarian response, and the lab culture dictates the long-term medical strategy.
Knowing how to spot and stop the fires is one thing, but looking at the global epidemiological map today, far too many are still burning out of control. So where are we right now?
We are still actively fighting the seventh pandemic. The numbers are incredibly stark. In 2023 alone, there were over 535,000 reported cases and about 4,000 deaths spanning 45 different countries.
That's massive.
It is. Cholera is currently considered deeply endemic in 69 countries.
And those are just the official reported numbers, right?
Unfortunately, yes. The dark reality of global surveillance is that official numbers represent a fraction of the truth. Researchers estimate the true global burden is actually somewhere between 1.3 to 4 million cases annually.
You might wonder why there is such a massive discrepancy between 500,000 and 4 million.
It comes down to fear and economics. Countries often hide, suppress, or severely underreport outbreaks out of a justified fear of the devastating economic repercussions.
Because a declared cholera outbreak can instantly trigger travel bans, halt trade, and obliterate a nation's tourism industry overnight.
Exactly, so they stay quiet.
It's vital to ground those statistics. We are talking about millions of cases. Behind every single hidden, suppressed number is a human life. Someone's child, parent, or friend lost to a disease that we have known exactly how to cure for over half a century.
It represents a profound tragedy of global public health. It is fundamentally a disease of inequity.
So how do we finally close the book on this ancient waterborne killer? What does the future look like?
Well, the roadmap does exist. The WHO's Global Task Force on Cholera Control has outlined a comprehensive roadmap to 2030. The ambitious goal is to reduce global cholera deaths by 90% and to completely eliminate the disease in up to 20 countries.
That is ambitious. Is there any new science helping us get there?
Actually, yes. In terms of the scientific pipeline, researchers are looking beyond traditional antibiotics. They're actively investigating probiotics as a way to fortify and restore the gut microbiota.
Probiotics, like the stuff in yogurt.
Basically, yes, but highly targeted. The hope is to clinically manage patients by using beneficial bacteria to outcompete Vibrio cholerae. This protects the gut without relying solely on antibiotics, which, as we mentioned, inevitably fuel resistance.
That's fascinating.
But ultimately, ending cholera is no longer a question of medical discovery. We have the tools, the knowledge, and the cures. It is entirely a question of political will, infrastructure investment, and socioeconomic equity.
It all comes back to the water in the bathtub. We know how to turn the faucet off. We just need the global commitment to actually build the pipes. Consider this provocative thought to ponder as we wrap up. Could the future of fighting this bacterial villain lie not in traditional pharmaceutical drugs, but in unleashing an engineered army of good probiotic bacteria to actively fight for the territory of our gut?
It's a very real possibility.
Stay informed. Stay prepared. This has been Outbreak Brief.